Welcome to Vintage Readings for Sleep. Tonight's reading comes from a public domain magazine published in the early 20th century. These classic essays and stories are gently told to help you unwind, slow your thoughts, and drift toward rest. Settle in. Let the words comfort you. This reading is drawn from Walking by Henry David Thoreau, originally published in the Atlantic Journal in June of 1862. The essay explores a calm escape through meditation and the spiritual nature of walking through nature. The text is in the public domain and has been gently edited for clarity and fluid spoken delivery. Walking by Henry David Thoreau. I wish to speak a word for nature, for absolute freedom and wildness, as contrasted with a freedom and culture merely civil. I regard man as an inhabitant or a part and parcel of nature, rather than as a member of society. I wish to make an extreme statement, if so I may make an emphatic one, for there are enough champions of civilization. The minister, the school committee, and every one of you will take care of that. I have met with but one or two persons in the course of my life who understood the art of walking, that is, of taking walks, who had a genius, so to speak, for sauntering. The word is beautifully derived from idle people who roved about the country in the Middle Ages and asked charity under pretense of going to the Holy Land, until children exclaimed, "There goes a Saint-Terre, a saunterer, a Holy Lander." For every walk is a sort of crusade preached by some Peter the Hermit within us to go forth and reconquer this Holy Land from the hands of the infidels. It is true we are but faint-hearted crusaders nowadays, even the walkers, who undertake no persevering, never-ending enterprises. Our expeditions are but tours, and come round again at evening to the old hearthside from which we set out. We should go forth on the shortest walk in the spirit of undying adventure, never to return, prepared to send back our embalmed hearts only as relics to our desolate kingdoms. If you are ready to leave father and mother and brother and sister and wife and child and friends and never see them again, then you are ready for a walk. If you have paid your debts, made your will, settled all your affairs, and are a free man, then you are prepared. Only then does the enterprise truly begin. To come down to my own experience, my companion and I, when I sometimes have one, take pleasure in fancying ourselves knights of a new, or rather an old order, not equestrians or chevaliers, not ridders or riders, but walkers, a still more ancient and honorable class, I trust. He is a walker errant, a sort of fourth estate, outside of church and state and people. We have felt that we almost alone hereabouts practiced this noble art, though most of my townsmen would fain walk sometimes as I do, but they cannot. No wealth can buy the requisite leisure, freedom, and independence, which are the capital in this profession. It requires a direct dispensation from heaven to become a walker, for ambulator nascitur, non fit. The walker is born, not made. Some can remember a walk taken 10 years ago when they were blessed enough to lose themselves for half an hour in the woods. Yet I know they have confined themselves to the highway ever since, whatever pretensions they may make to belong to this select class. No doubt they were elevated for a moment, as by the reminiscence of a previous state of existence when even they were foresters and outlaws. When I think of Robin Hood coming to the greenwood in a merry morning and hearing the notes of birds singing, I feel the distance between that spirit and our own. "It is far gone," said Robin, "that I was last here, me list a little for to shoot at the dun deer." The greenwood calls to something ancient in us still. I think I cannot preserve my health and spirits unless I spend 4 hours a day at least, often more, sauntering through woods and over hills and fields, absolutely free from worldly engagements. When I remember that mechanics and shopkeepers sit all day with crossed legs, as if legs were made to sit upon and not to stand or walk, I marvel at their endurance. They deserve some credit for not having committed suicide long ago. I cannot stay in my chamber for a single day without acquiring some rust, and when I steal forth late in the afternoon, I feel as though I had committed a sin to be atoned for. I am astonished at the power of endurance, not to say the moral insensibility, of neighbors who confine themselves to shops and offices for months and years together. Bonaparte may speak of 3 o'clock in the morning courage, but it is nothing to the courage required to sit cheerfully at 3 in the afternoon over against oneself. How womankind, confined to the house still more than men, endure it, I do not know, though I suspect that most do not endure it at all. When we shake the dust of the village from our garments and pass houses with Doric or Gothic fronts, my companion whispers that their occupants are likely gone to bed. Then I appreciate the beauty of architecture, which never turns in, but forever stands erect, keeping watch over the slumberers. As a man grows older, his ability to sit still and follow indoor occupations increases. He grows vespertinal, venturing out only just before sundown. At last, he gets all the walk he requires in half an hour. But the walking of which I speak has nothing in it akin to taking exercise as the sick take medicine. It is itself the enterprise and adventure of the day. If you would get exercise, go in search of the springs of life. You must walk like a camel, which is said to ruminate while walking. Wordsworth's servant, when asked to show his study, replied, "Here is his library, but his study is out of doors." Living much in the sun and wind may roughen the cuticle, but it deepens the fiber of character. When we walk, we naturally go to the fields and woods, and I wonder what would become of us if we walked only in a garden or a mall. Even philosophers planted groves and opened porticos when they would not go to the woods themselves. I am alarmed when I have walked bodily into the woods without arriving there in spirit. In my afternoon walk, I would fain forget all my morning occupations and obligations to society. If I am thinking of something out of the woods, I am not truly there. I would return to my senses and stand wholly where I stand. My vicinity affords many good walks, and though I have walked almost daily for years, I have not exhausted them. An absolutely new prospect is a great happiness, and I can still obtain it any afternoon. 2 or 3 hours walking carries me to as strange a country as I expect ever to see. Nowadays, almost all man's improvements deform the landscape and make it more tame and cheap. I once saw a miser with a surveyor searching for bounds while heaven had taken place around him. Yet he saw no angels, only an old post hole. When I looked again, I saw that the Prince of Darkness himself was his surveyor. I can walk 10 or 20 miles from my door without crossing a road except where the fox and the mink do. From many a hill, I see civilization afar, and I am pleased to note how little space politics occupies in the landscape. In half an hour, I can reach a place where a man does not stand from year's end to year's end, and there politics are not. The village is the place to which the roads tend, a sort of expansion of the highway as a lake of a river. It is the body of which roads are the arms and legs, a trivial or quadrivial place, the thoroughfare and ordinary of travelers. They who dwell there are worn by travel that goes by and over them without traveling themselves. Some do not walk at all, others walk in the highways, and a few walk across lots. Roads are made for horses and men of business, and I do not travel in them much because I am not in a hurry to get to any tavern or depot to which they lead. I walk out into a nature such as the old prophets and poets walked in, and though you may call it America, it is not America discovered by Columbus or named by Americus Vespucius. There are a few old roads that may be trodden with profit, as if they led somewhere now that they are nearly discontinued. There is the old Marlborough Road, which does not go to Marlborough now, unless that is Marlborough where it carries me. I speak of it because there are one or two such roads in every town. The old Marlborough Road runs where they once dug for money but never found any, where sometimes solitary figures file past and others of wild habit set snares for partridges and rabbits. It is a living way, though nobody repairs it because nobody wears it. What is it but a direction out there and the bare possibility of going somewhere? Great guideboards of stone stand there, travelers none, cenotaphs of the towns named on their crowns. They are a great endeavor to be something forever, blank tablets where a traveler might engrave in one sentence all that is known. If with fancy unfurled you leave your abode, you may go round the world by the old Marlborough Road. At present, the best part of the land here is not private property, and the walker enjoys comparative freedom. But the day may come when it is partitioned into pleasure grounds, when fences multiply and walking upon God's earth is construed as trespass. To enjoy a thing exclusively is commonly to exclude yourself from the true enjoyment of it. What is it that makes it sometimes so hard to determine whither we will walk? I believe there is a subtle magnetism in nature which, if we unconsciously yield to it, will direct us aright. There is a right way, but from heedlessness and stupidity, we are liable to take the wrong one. When I go out uncertain of my direction and submit myself to instinct, I find that I inevitably settle southwest toward some wood or meadow in that direction. My needle may vary a few degrees, but it always settles between west and south-southwest. The future lies that way to me, and the earth seems richer on that side. Eastward I go only by force, but westward I go free. No business leads me west, and it is hard for me to believe I shall find fair landscapes behind the eastern horizon. Let me live where I will. On this side is the city, and on that the wilderness, and ever I am leaving the city more and more. I must walk toward Oregon and not toward Europe. That way the nation moves and mankind progresses from east to west. We go eastward to realize history and westward into the future with a spirit of enterprise and adventure. The Atlantic is a Lethean stream, across which we forget the old world and its institutions. If there is another chance for the race before it reaches the Styx, it may lie in the Lethe of the Pacific, which is 3 times as wide. The westward impulse has shaped modern enterprise and commerce. Every sunset inspires me with the desire to go to a west as distant and as fair as that into which the sun descends. He appears to migrate daily westward and tempts us to follow him as the great western pioneer. We dream of mountain ridges gilded by his rays and imagine gardens of the Hesperides in the horizon. Columbus felt this westward tendency more strongly than any before him and obeyed it. He found a new world for Castile and Leon because he followed that instinct. The herd of men in those days scented fresh pastures from afar. Where can there be found an area so fertile and varied as that occupied by the bulk of our states? North America contains more species of large trees than Europe, and its forests and rivers exceed in scale and vigor. The heavens appear higher, the sky bluer, and the thunder louder. If the heavens of America appear infinitely higher and the stars brighter, I trust these facts are symbolical. Perhaps philosophy and poetry will soar to corresponding heights beneath such skies. Climate itself may inspire a grander scale of thought and heart. As a true patriot, I should be ashamed to think Adam in paradise was more favorably situated than the backwoodsman here. Our sympathies are not confined to New England, but extend westward to the younger sons of the nation. It is more important to understand the living present than to study dead tongues. When I saw a panorama of the Rhine, I floated in imagination through a dream of the Middle Ages. Castles and cities rose in hushed music from vine-clad hills, and I felt transported to an heroic age. Yet when I later beheld the Mississippi, I saw that the heroic age is here and now. The foundations of castles are yet to be laid on this river, and the famous bridges yet to be thrown across it. This is a Rhine of a different kind, more concerned with the future than the past. The hero is commonly the simplest and obscurest of men. The West of which I speak is but another name for the wild. In wildness is the preservation of the world. Every tree sends its fibers forth in search of it. Our ancestors were savages, and the story of Romulus and Remus being suckled by a wolf is not a meaningless fable. The founders of every state which has risen to eminence have drawn their nourishment and vigor from a similar wild source. It was because the children of the empire were not suckled by the wolf that they were conquered by those who were. I believe in the forest and in the meadow and in the night in which the corn grows. We require an infusion of hemlock spruce or arbor vitae in our tea, and something more than stall-fed beef to make a man of us. Give me a wildness whose glance no civilization can endure. There are intervals which border the strain of the wood thrush to which I would migrate. They are wild lands where no settler has squatted, and to which methinks I am already acclimated. I long for those regions as if they were my native air. The African hunter tells us that the skin of the eland emits the most delicious perfume of trees and grass. I would have every man so much a part of nature that his very presence sweetly advertises the fields and forests he haunts. The trapper's coat that smells of musquash is sweeter to me than garments scented only with trade or study. A tanned skin is something more than respectable, and perhaps olive is a fitter color than white for a denizen of the woods. A white man beside a Tahitian may look like a plant bleached by the gardener's art. How near to good is what is wild. Life consists with wildness, and the most alive is the wildest. One who presses forward incessantly and makes infinite demands on life will always find himself in a new country. He will be climbing over the prostrate stems of primitive forest trees. Hope and the future for me are not in lawns and cultivated fields, nor in towns and cities. They are in the impervious and quaking swamps. I derive more of my subsistence from the swamps which surround my town than from the cultivated gardens in the village. Botany can tell me the names of shrubs in the bog, but it cannot measure their richness to my spirit. I would rather front my house upon a mass of dull red bushes in the swamp than upon a trim and graveled yard. The most elaborate ornaments soon weary me, but the swamp never does. If it were proposed to me to dwell beside the most beautiful garden ever contrived, or beside a dismal swamp, I should decide for the swamp. My spirits rise in proportion to the outward dreariness. Give me the ocean, the desert, or the wilderness. In the desert, there is a keen enjoyment in a mere animal existence. Those who have re-entered cultivated lands after wandering the steppes speak of being suffocated by civilization. When I would recreate myself, I seek the darkest and most interminable wood. A town is saved not more by righteous men than by the woods and swamps that surround it. A township where one primitive forest waves above and another rots below is fitted to raise poets and philosophers. Out of such wilderness comes the reformer, eating locusts and wild honey. The civilized nations have been sustained by primitive forests which anciently rotted where they stand. They survive only as long as the soil is not exhausted. Little is to be expected of a nation when it must make manure of the bones of its fathers. It is said that agriculture here assumes proportions unknown elsewhere. The farmer redeems the meadow and thereby makes himself stronger and, in some respects, more natural. Yet, I have seen him swimming for his life in his own swamp property, intent still on redeeming it. The weapons with which we have gained our victories are not the sword and lance. They are the spade, the turf cutter, and the bog hoe, rusted with the blood of many a meadow. The farmer is armed with plow and spade, and so entrenches himself in the land. In literature, it is only the wild that attracts us. Dullness is but another name for tameness. A truly good book is as natural and unexpected as a wildflower discovered on the prairie. Genius is a light which makes the darkness visible, like lightning that shatters the temple of knowledge. It is not a taper lighted at the hearthstone of the race. The poet enjoys no advantage over Homer, despite all the discoveries of science. Where is the literature that gives expression to nature? Mythology comes nearer to it than anything else. It is the crop the old world bore before its soil was exhausted. The West is preparing to add its fables to those of the East. It remains to be seen what the valleys of the Amazon and Mississippi will produce. Perhaps when liberty has become a fiction of the past, poets will be inspired by American mythology. In short, all good things are wild and free. There is something in a strain of music in a summer night that reminds me of wild beasts in their native forests. Give me for my friends wild men, not tame ones. I rejoice that horses and steers must be broken before they become slaves of men. All men are not equally fit subjects for civilization. It is no part of true culture to tame tigers or to make sheep ferocious. When looking over a list of names in a foreign language, I am reminded that there is little in a name itself. It may belong to a rat as readily as to a man, and the sound alone carries no humanity. The names of men are often as cheap and meaningless as the names of dogs. It would be some advantage to philosophy if men were named only in the gross as they are known. It might be sufficient to know the genus and variety without pretending to know the individual. We are not prepared to believe that every private soldier in a Roman army possessed a character of his own. Our truest names are nicknames, earned rather than given. Among some tribes, a man acquired a new name with each exploit, and his name was his fame. It is pitiful when one bears a name merely for convenience, having earned neither name nor fame. I will not allow mere names to make distinctions for me. I see that a man may take off his familiar epithet as he removes his jacket. Somewhere within him is recorded a wild and original name which society does not pronounce. Here is this vast and savage mother of ours, nature, lying all around us with such beauty and such affection for her children. Yet we are early weaned from her breast to society, to that culture which is merely the interaction of man upon man. It produces, at best, a civilization destined to have a speedy limit. In society, even in its best institutions, I detect a certain precocity. When we should still be growing children, we are already little men. Give me a culture that deepens the soil, not one that relies only upon improved implements and heating manures. There may be an excess even of informing light. It has been observed that the sun's rays act destructively upon stone and metal by day, yet those bodies restore themselves at night. The hours of darkness are as necessary to the inorganic creation as sleep is to the organic. I would not have every part of a man cultivated any more than every acre of earth tilled. Part will be meadow and forest, preparing mold for a distant future. The annual decay of vegetation is itself a provision for life. We have heard of a society for the diffusion of useful knowledge. Methinks there is equal need of a society for the diffusion of useful ignorance. What we call knowledge often robs us of the advantage of our actual ignorance. By long industry, a man accumulates facts and stores them in memory. Then, when he saunters into the great fields of thought, he goes to grass like a horse and leaves his harness behind. The spring has come, and it is time to feed upon the green crop. A man's ignorance may be beautiful, while his so-called knowledge is ugly and worse than useless. Which is better, the one who knows nothing and knows that he knows nothing, or the one who knows something but believes he knows all? The highest we attain is not knowledge, but sympathy with intelligence. There are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamed of in our philosophy. This higher knowledge is like the lighting up of mist by the sun. Man cannot look serenely into the face of truth any more than he can look directly at the sun. There is something servile in seeking after a law merely to obey it. A successful life knows no law in that sense. Live free, child of the mist, for with respect to knowledge, we are all children of the mist. It is remarkable how few events or crises there are in our histories. I would fain be assured that I am growing, even if my growth disturbs this dull equanimity. It would be well if our lives were divine tragedies rather than trivial comedies. While almost all men feel attraction towards society, few are strongly drawn to nature. In relation to nature, men often appear lower than animals. We are told that the Greeks called the world beauty, yet we treat this merely as a philological curiosity. For my part, I live a sort of border life with regard to nature. I make occasional forays into her territory, yet no moon or firefly has shown me the causeway to her innermost sanctum. Nature is so vast that we have never seen one of her features entire. The familiar fields sometimes reveal another land than that described in their owner's deeds. The bounds I have surveyed fade like an image from glass. The world we commonly know leaves no lasting trace. I once walked at sunset and saw golden rays straggle into the aisles of a pine wood like light in some noble hall. I felt as though an admirable and shining family had settled there unknown to me. Their industry was invisible, yet I heard the finest imaginable hum as of distant bees. They seemed to recline upon the sunbeams and live in perfect serenity. Their coat of arms was a lichen painted on pine and oak. If it were not for such families, I think I should move out of Concord. We are accustomed to say that fewer pigeons visit us each year because our forests furnish no mast for them. So too, fewer thoughts visit each growing man, for the grove in our minds is laid waste, and scarcely a twig remains for them to perch on. Our winged thoughts no longer soar, but are turned to poultry. We hug the earth, and how rarely we mount. I once climbed a tall white pine, and, though well pitched, was well repaid by discovering new mountains in the horizon I had never seen before. Nature expands her most delicate blossoms toward the heavens, above our heads and unobserved by us. Above all, we cannot afford not to live in the present. Unless our philosophy hears the cock crow in every barnyard within our horizon, it is belated. There is in that sound a newer testament, the gospel according to this moment. When in doleful moods I hear a cockerel crow far or near, I think to myself that there is one of us well at any rate. With a sudden gush I return to my senses. His strain is free from all plaintiveness and excites a pure morning joy. We had a remarkable sunset one November day as I walked in a meadow at the source of a small brook. The softest, brightest light fell upon the dry grass and shrub oaks, and our shadows stretched long eastward as if we were the only motes in its beams. It was such light as might make a paradise of that meadow. When we reflected that this was no solitary phenomenon, but would happen forever and ever to cheer the latest child who walked there, it was more glorious still. The sun sets upon some retired meadow with all the splendor it lavishes upon cities. Even if only a marsh hawk witnesses it, the glory is undiminished. We walked in such pure and golden light that I thought I had never bathed in such a flood before. The west side of every wood gleamed like the boundary of Elysium. The sun on our backs seemed like a gentle herdsman driving us home at evening. So we saunter toward the Holy Land. One day the sun shall shine more brightly than ever before and light up our whole lives with a great awakening light. It shall be warm and serene and golden as on a bankside in autumn.
This concludes tonight's reading. If you're still awake, you'll find more quiet vintage essays waiting in the playlist. Rest well. I'll read to you again soon.